Hello, everybody. This is Sudha Jamthe, and this is the IoT Show. Hello, everybody on Periscope. We're just getting started with the IoT Show. We have a topic called IoT Are People, and it's real. And those of you who have checked in and seen our broadcast from a couple of weeks back, where we spoke to Professor Banafa, and we spoke about artificial intelligence and everything, must be thinking something about this topic, but it's going to surprise you. I met Jim, and Jim is the IoT guru on Twitter, and I met him on Twitter. But before that, I actually ended up reading a couple of his articles, which were kind of provocative on this whole topic. So I'm going to let him talk, and we will go into a deeper discussion. So with that, let's go to Jim. Hi, Jim.
Hi. Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you.
I guess the best thing is to give a quick background.
Yes, definitely. Tell us who you are and your love for IoT, and how did you become the IoT guru?
Yeah, so I have a passion for IoT, specifically from the direction of connected home. I've been in this space selling and creating software for 23 years. I sold two companies that I founded to Motorola. The last one was called 4Home, really targeting mass market adoption of connected home, smart home, all the technologies to connect things together. Before that, I was a nuclear engineer in the military, so it's kind of a job shift. But ever since I got involved, I kind of wanted to automate my home theater, and I just got into it, and I've loved it ever since. These days, I'm actually the chief scientist and the chief evangelist at a company called Greenwave Systems, which is smack in the heart of IoT, doing some really good things. But the reason that the topic is things are people too, the idea is that one of the challenges I've seen over 20 years is there's lack of mass market adoption because the messaging is way too muddled. Apple has it right. People like things simple. So the message has to be something that they can relate to. As soon as you start talking technology, people just glaze over. They shut down. They don't really have a passion for it. And Hollywood has done a great job of scaring people with regards to where they think technology is going. Now, there are some things to be scared of with regards to technology, but the starting point that we're at right now is not really a point right now.
There are a lot of things we should be scared about in people too, normal people.
That's exactly right, exactly right. So the whole idea of things are people too, and as you mentioned, there's two articles on TechCrunch. I've been speaking kind of about this for a little while now.
So let's take one at a time. I mean, first, let's talk about this whole concept of IoT as people. What do you really mean? You're not talking about people as in people with feelings, right? You're talking.
So feelings is a completely different animal. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in the messaging, in the way that we think about use cases involving connected devices, right? What is IoT? First off, I think IoT is a massive misnomer. It's not the fact that it's on the internet that makes the thing valuable. It's the fact that it's interoperable, right? It's something that is gaining a voice. And just because you speak a voice, right? There's tons of websites that are on the internet, but they're not interoperable. It's that interoperability that we really want to eke out the real value of IoT. And we get that by taking data and turning that data into information by using context. Long, different story, but at the end of the day.
Since you came from the home computing, as the home automation as your first IoT. IoT was connected self and wearable, the quantified self wearable, or your connected city and everything else, right? Or the industrial IoT, right? I do very little justice to cover industrial IoT. I just got started with an awesome guest last week. But you're talking about, since you came looking at it from the connected home perspective, you're talking about not connecting us to the internet via multiple devices, but creating use cases of multiple devices talking to each other. Like Target has an open house in San Francisco, where they're saying you come into the house after a workout and your Nest knows that. And maybe your Fitband talks to the Nest, and the Nest knows that you come in from a workout, and it adjusts the home temperature. They have a combination. Is that what you're calling as a connectedness, interoperable?
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes down to the user, right? It all centers on the person, right? So it's the connected you. but it's the things that involve in your lifestyle. When you're at home, it's the connected home devices. When you're in your car, it's a connected car. When you're in a hotel, when you're on the road, when you're at work, it's your environment gaining a voice and able to share more information with you. And that's really what it's about, is more information and more actionable information. That's what all of these devices are here to do, is to give you more actual information, so that it's supposed to make your life more simple and it's supposed to help you live your life better, because you don't have to worry about all the overhead that technology is supposed to take away from your life. But it's a rough start to say the least.
My favorite connected use case that I keep talking about in my home, and I've not yet got it done, is last couple of weeks it was very hot in California, and I had to leave my pet at home. And when I leave, it was okay, the temperature seems fine, but then through the day it becomes super hot. And so I'm afraid whether I should have my fan turned on. I don't have AC in the house. And we in California say it's just that 1 week when it is hot and we don't need air conditioner. That's a myth, but
been more than 1 week.
Right. So what happens is I want my fan to look at the temperature in outside, Nest to tell me what is the temperature inside, and then plot and find a trend and know exactly when to turn my fan on or off. And that's a connected, like what you're talking about is an example of multiple devices intelligently do something. It solves my problem, so I don't need to worry about my pet being in
right. So let's personify that problem. Right. The problem is you want comfort to be in your home at times when you're not there to adjust it. So if you wanted a certain thing to happen in a company that you had, you would start a group, and that group would be empowered to make decisions towards meeting the goal. Right. So the question is, well, what does that group entail? Well, it's whatever is going to touch the pieces that make the decision. Right. Okay. It's going to measure the temperature. Is it going to get temperature from online? Is it going to temperature locally? Is it a little of both? Does it care about the weather? It's going to measure the temperature inside. So it's the temperature, again, inside, is the air flowing, all these type of things. And it's going to have a control aspect to actually control that temperature to ultimately provide that outcome. You could sit down with an agile framework and put together a roadmap to make a group be able to do this. This is not unlike what we do when we talk about machines, right? So when we talk about technology, if we think about the technology as workers that are solving a problem because they're taking their specific skill sets and applying it, then when you start to think that way, there's a lot of use cases that start. So in your case, you need to hire a comfort team, and that comfort team needs to come well qualified, right? Just like you'd hire any employee, I got to know that they're going to work well with others. I need to know that they're going to do the job I hired them to do, and I need to know I can trust them at the end of the day because they're getting valuable information to make their decisions. They need to sign an NDA.
So that's a very good point. When I read your article and you said that when we look at IoT as people, you're becoming dependent on them to do something a person or a group of people are going to do. So taking the same fan example, something you said excited me. It's that they can work with each other. I mean, in a work setting, when we do all kinds of hiring, the biggest thing is culture fit and all that, right?
Absolutely.
So the same thing for IoT to get each device to work with another, right? For example, Home Depot, for their 600 devices, they betted on one hub, and they said everything should talk to this hub, right? Whereas Target says, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Right, you have an app which will make it all interoperable, and it's a nightmare for common man, right? So,
right. So absolutely, there's different approaches. The one where you don't know what's interoperable. You walk into a company. There are several. I don't want to name any companies here, but you walk into a certain electronics store today, and you look around, and there's all these different products, but there's nothing that shows the interoperability. When I was young, my mom knew how to dress me so that I fit in with the rest of the kids, because there was this theming called Garanimals, right? They put little animals on each one of the shirt and the pants, and if I had a lion and a lion, they matched. I was styling. But if I had the audacity to wear a lion with a rhinoceros, I was like completely shunned because I was violating. They weren't going to talk together. They weren't going to look good together. I think we need the same thing for IoT. Some sort of a Garanimals for devices.
Are you just making a case, or was this your animal matching outfit was really something?
It was really something. Absolutely. It was, I guess that moms in the 70s and 80s had too much time or had not enough time on their hands, and they were dressing their kids strangely. So they came up with this idea of garanimals. Yeah, look it up. It's something real, but it's what we actually need for IoT, because we got 15, 16 different languages out there. You walk into this electronics store and you look at the shelf, and all along the shelf there's all these products, but there's nothing that indicates interoperability. In fact, they look almost exactly like silos, because you have an area here and an area here and an area here. And to your point, Lowe's has the Iris program. And with Iris, everything's interoperable and you get everything that you want, but you're also, you've got to get what they want. Now, with Target's opening up and saying, well, it's really about the app. So if we had one app that could bring it all under one umbrella, then that's the magic. I think that the right answer is actually something very different. I think that the companies, now you've got to have a killer app and a killer experience as kind of the minimum bar of expectations. But if you think about things as people, right, and you think about the interaction, interoperability you have with people, I don't get an app so that I can talk to you and then get a different app so I can talk to somebody else, right? I use those apps to talk to everybody. I get a phone. I don't have to have an app to call my wife. I don't have to an app to call my girlfriend, an app to call my mom, my dad. It's all my phone, right? So why do I have to have that for my devices? Because I currently do. Why do I even have to have a special app? Why can't I call them on the phone? Why can't I tweet them? Why can't I use Facebook messaging? Right? 1 billion people on this planet understand the social paradigms, more than 1 billion people. Why can't I use those same paradigms to talk to my house? And that's the whole idea. Is I think that when you start to talk about interoperability, the key to get mass market adoption is to reduce the friction between people and technology. You make it so it's a conversational experience, and technology is not the blocking point in all of this. It's not hard to actually do this. In fact, in the hacker channels, they've been having things tweet and tweeting to things for some time. But it just needs to have these companies that are like, you know, Lowe's or whoever these big guys are that have their platforms and they want to interoperate. They need to understand that what they're putting in place is a platform. And this is what my company does too. This is a disclaimer. You put in place a platform, but if you do that platform right and you abstract things away from the actual animals underneath, right? The things and the languages of the things and all this stuff, then you're able to interact in a much more semantic way, meaning you're able to build a sentence structure. So things with this hashtag should do this thing. And this is a new article I'm writing on called Tag You're It. The idea is if you use meta tags to actually relate to your things, it's very much like you relate to your friends. You put friends in groups, and all of these paradigms carry forward once you kind of start thinking about your things as people.
No, I think the standards is a whole different thing, right? There are several different standards evolving, or there are so many standards bodies who are trying to create one standard, but then there are multiple standards bodies that don't talk to each other. So it's like in your analogy, there are groups of people who work together, but then there is this other group of people and they don't talk to them, right? It's like one team doesn't get along. And, you know, if you take that in the workplace analogy, it's a nightmare if your front-end team is not going to talk to your back-end team, or your engineering team is not going to get along with marketing or sales. And
well, you could also, you're absolutely right. That's a way to look at it from a company perspective, or you can go even more global and think about it as a world problem, right? In the world problem, we have 215 or more languages, right? Countries have languages and dialects and everything else, but we have, and this is very controversial for the European and the world viewers here, but you do have a council called the United Nations that was specifically brought together to help make it so that countries can work together through mediation, through translation, through some sort of a governing body, governing being loosely identified there. And within the UN, if you speak one of 6 languages, you don't have to bring your own translators, right? If you don't speak those languages, then you bring your own translator. It's really a matter of translating in and out of those core languages. You don't have to know language, and let's just call this language X. You don't have to know language X to communicate with somebody who speaks language Y if you have translations of your own, and you can bring those in, right?
So So the compatibility between devices, which you saw, you mentioned as interoperable people getting along with each other, right? You had other variables. You had, I think you had trust, or you built out a whole Maslow's need triangle. Let's go look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the idea is, okay, if things are people too, let's blow that out and think about how we think about that thing, how we think about people. And Maslow did this psychological basically profile, and he looked at the core existence of man and what's needed. And the fundamentals of this idea was, if you didn't have everything at one layer, then you would never have the desire to have things above the level. Like the first one is air and water and what a human being needs just to exist. And above that, you move into everything till you ultimately arrive at fulfillment and joy. But there's a lot of steps in between. You've got to feel secure in your housing. You've got to have shelter. You got to have food. You got to have all these things. You got to have above that. You got to have recognition. You've got to have involvement. You got to have some sort of social engagement. So there's a whole kind of step ladder there. And I looked at what was there, and I tried to align that to things and translate that over. So this article that was on TechCrunch, basically, I took that and I broke down each one of those categories and I talked about those categories, but fundamentally trying to stay as much within Maslow's pyramid as possible, so it didn't look like I was just trying to recreate for the sake of recreating. So at the end of the day, it's like physical needs are the core, right? Something needs to have, it's got to have power. If it's a device and it needs to share information, it's got to have some sort of power, whether it's harvested power, whether that's provided power from AC, or whether that's battery operated power, whatever that is. It has to have a physical connectivity, because if it wants to share outside, it needs a radio, it needs something that allows it to communicate. It needs to be able to be sealed from its environment. If you're going to drop it into the Alaskan tundra, if you don't protect it, it's not going to have much in that way. And that's people the same way. If you drop somebody into a situation where they just cannot exist, like a volcano, they're not going to be there very long at all. They're not going to be able to fulfill their needs.
So compared to the human Maslow triangle, power is like food, the shelter that we need is like the protection from the environment. But then it's interesting, because then the rest of the stuff, the Maslow triangle, is social interaction and trust. Right. How do you do the translation to IoT to actually make it meaningful?
So I step through it three ways, and I break it down, and I follow self-existence as kind of that bottom requirement. That physical need is what you need to have self-existence. And then to exist, there's also another need that you have for devices. And these needs actually tie specifically around a thing. And a thing could be a single thing, or it could be a complex network of things that actually constitutes its own thing. So in this example, it could be a sensor is the thing, but a security system, which is made up of sensors, can also be its own thing. So you have this hierarchy of devices that can come together, of things that can come together to form a bigger thing. But from that perspective, self-existence is physical, but just as important for things to exist. One of the basic needs of a physical core need for an IoT thing is it has to have a reason to exist, right? It's not something that's going to be spawned by nature, not yet at least. It's going to instead be something that you have to have a need, otherwise it won't exist. It won't make it out of a lab if you do not have a reason for its existence. And because of this reason, go ahead.
Like you were saying in the beginning, right, that there are different, it has to solve, it's a use case, it has to solve some fundamental problem.
Absolutely.
So though you're saying it's the need for the IoT, it is the need of the human to have that IoT. In my case, it is giving me peace of mind that my dog is still going to stay comfortable, because this set of the fan and the nest and somehow, how I get the external temperature, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly right. And then one of the points in the messaging is security is paramount. Privacy and security are paramount. So from an existence perspective, that includes a device that may not even have communication yet. It doesn't have connectivity yet. But if it can be cracked open, it will be cracked open. So you need to make sure that you have secure storage. Secure element is a term that's used today, by folks like Apple, but it's got to have the information on it has to be secure at a core level. And if it's going to communicate, it also has to be capable of authentication and encryption, and basically protecting information that it has when it gathers it, when it stores it, and then when it transmits it. Because once you have security, then you can have connectivity to the outside world, right? The idea there is security is so fundamental when you think about a thing. And it's also contextual to that thing. The amount of security is directly proportional to the importance of the information that thing is providing. And when I say information, it's a two-way street. Go ahead.
Sorry, Jim. We have some people on Periscope, so I want to check in. People on Periscope, if you have questions, everybody watching on YouTube or Google Plus can only watch our broadcast. So you're the lucky ones who can post a comment. You can send some hearts if you like it, like what you're hearing, but also ask us some questions and we'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, and if you're watching this delayed, you can obviously tweet us and ask us questions as well.
That's right. So back to the needs triangle. So we reached almost the top. So if this is how you translate it, what is that final self-realization for an IoT as a person?
Well, that's that once it has the ability to do everything below, then it makes sense to actually give it smart needs. Now, again, keeping in mind that a device, a single thing can be considered here, or a network of things. Yeah. It becomes very interesting because the actual needs of the things may not be served by the thing itself, but rather by a support system for the thing. So smart needs are really interesting because it brings into play analytics. It brings into play learned and predictive behaviors, right? I've got logic. I can see what I'm doing over time. I am a network of things as let's say I'm an occupancy tracking system. And I am a series of 7 motion and occupancy sensors and beacons that are tied to a phone that basically identify the position of an individual inside of a space. So I can actually take all of that together, and individually, I have one output as this tracking system, and that is the location of my person. The person that I'm tracking, that's their location. And I can actually take that location, and now that I've got analytics that I can apply to that over time, time of day, time of week, maybe it's for a sales functionality, whatever the context is, I can now start to predict, okay, they did this 5 times in the last 5 days, and they're coming in the same routine this time, they're probably going to do this again. So I can now, instead of just sitting and saying, this is where they are, I can now start to add a new value into my data model that says this is where they're going to be. I can also put that with a certain amount of accuracy. So that's what smart needs, is this ability to not only learn, but to also bring information that can predict, so that other systems. So once you can predict as a let's say a self-tracking system, once you can predict where somebody's going to be, that's a data point for even a larger system that can say, well, if I know where they are, and I know when it is, and I know who they are, and I know these other things through other sensors, then I can actually create more interesting engagements with that person as a larger thing system.
So in my example of the same fan, it could actually look at the pattern of what we leave our home temperature setting when we are away, and Nest tries to do that, right? Nest tries to learn from our tweaking as to what is the temperature for my home different from your home. Exactly. And if it can automatically turn the fan on and off and just take care of it, I don't even need to know about it, right?
Exactly right.
But to your point about this whole interoperability, right? The combination of devices. This is the time I come from the gym after my workout. Or on Tuesday, I do a heavy workout and I do that, a longer run, and I come back. And if they could talk to each other and predict that Tuesday she's going to be more cranky and tired, and let's turn the fan on, or it could make a cup of tea for me. But that's beyond our scope.
Hungry, and I've got to offset all that workout with a nice pizza. So pre-order the pizza, so it's waiting for me after I get done with my run, just so that I can balance out the universe.
People are giving hearts to your pizza idea. That's awesome. This is unbelievable. I mean, first, when I saw the needs triangle, I just thought you're just making a a one-to-one comparison to kind of drive the point. I said, yeah, we know that, you need security, privacy, connection, all that stuff, right? But I think when you go to the self-realization, it takes it to a whole different domain. So this is basic existence. So you get an IoT, give it sensors, give it connectivity, add security, which is a requirement. It does what it's supposed to do. But then once it stays in a community of other IoTs,
exactly,
it's to a whole different self-realization.
And that's what I actually, in my article, I call that the Seussian principle. You go from micro to macro, right? The whole world living on a dust speck, but then it blows up to a bigger and a bigger and a bigger. It's a fantastic idea to start to think about the way you go from your individual sensor all the way up to global. And in the case of, say, your Elon Musk, you think about Mars. So it's all about, your solar system management system. So it's really interesting the way we can do that. And the only way we can do that is if we, again, think about these things more than just devices, more than just than things that we buy from a store, but we consider their impact and their interaction in a much larger way.
So one thing I realize is, like, my phone is so much me, right? It's always on me. And I have withdrawals if I'm away from my phone and I'm just fidgeting around for something or the other, right? And our identity gets tied to the phone. When I lose it for a little bit, and then I don't know what to do with my life, and So I think that is the point. Right now, the IoTs are discrete devices, and we are talking about it's useful. We are still thinking with our logic, right? When it gets to a point where it is part of our life and it is helping me solve a problem, that's when we can get it to that self-realization point.
Absolutely right. And think about the stages that your phone has gone through, right? It's specifically the changes that have happened in the last, well, let's say the iPhone, which changed the way we looked at phones in general. That's 7 years ago, right? 2007. So it's not been that long. But what's happened during that time is not only have we changed your relationship with the technology that you hold dear to you and the way that you communicate with your friends and your family, but we've also changed how you look at technology, how technology works in your life, right? This whole idea of an app store, and that moms and kids 8 to 80 can actually load apps. And what was software installation like before that, right? First off, the industry was a walled garden. Whoever your carrier was owned you, because they said what goes in and what comes out. Apple changed all that. Now what we're seeing is, with the newest Apple device and in the models that the carriers are adopting, at least in the US, is a abstraction. So your carrier is now becoming a commodity that is interchangeable, and your phone is not necessarily tied to that carrier. So I think what you're going to see is these same customers are going to, as they embrace IoT, you're going to go through the same phase again. If you think about your device, your phone is your first IoT device. You're going to see your door locks and your thermostats and things that are personal to your home, to your car. They're going to need a service to deliver, and you're going to see kind of the same cycle that happens, where it starts off and it becomes a way for a company, whether it's a service provider, whether it's a retail store, somebody that wants a relationship with you, to have a tight relationship. But at some point, the inner workings are going to be worked out so that abstraction happens again. And you can abstract from that carrier into another level. Because an IoT device, a door lock, a light bulb, these devices, in IoT in general, it's not something brand new. It's not something that is unknown to us. It's actually something that's happened again and again and again. Computers are things. Smartphones are things. And what we're doing is we're just breaking the thing apart. It's an expansion. So inside your computer, for example, even the desktop from way back, you had a storage system. You had lights that give you indication of status. You had cooling fans. You had all this technology. And what we're doing now is we're taking the computer and we're expanding it across our lives. It's not just in one spot. My storage is in the cloud, or it's on my NAS, or it's a combination of both. My lighting is now indication all kinds of places. So I can get indication when I get an email, not just on my computer, but my light can turn red in my kitchen. The microphones are being, for some time, they've been going on in different places. Now people are putting them in your kitchen in the form of the the Alexa from Amazon. It's a complete expansion of the computer, and it's going to continue. So we can follow all the models.
So Alexa is so dear to me. It's part of my living room, and I'm beginning to feel that connection to Alexa, right? Because weather is very important for my family. Okay, first thing I used to get up and check the weather on my phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these days we just say, Alexa, what's the temperature? And it rambles on what it is now and what's the day is going to be, and then we decide a whole bunch of things, right, around that. And so I was having this conversation with a friend about what if Alexa starts machine learning, right? This is what she always asks, and it knows my voice from my kid's voice. And then this friend said, what if Alexa could know your dog's voice? And dogs bark when the dog is hungry, and it could turn your pet dispenser on. And being that it's coming from Amazon, they would even know, because there's a button for it. There's a dash button for the pet food. So I just wanted to just mention that, like, Alexa could be that thing that is looking for self-realization in my home.
So think about the evolution of Alexa, because the coolest feature of Alexa to me is that little remote control. Because I have a kind of an outside patio that's far from the kitchen, but I can turn the audio up to 10 and enjoy it on the back patio. It can't hear me when I'm there, but I can speak into this Bluetooth microphone. So what's interesting about that is that Bluetooth microphone is my dash for information. I press it, I say what I want, and back comes the information. It comes back over there. I think not having Bluetooth audio feedback in that remote control is a fail, and they're going to fix that fail soon. But Alexa is now, it's about to become location independent. I think that's what's going to happen, is because it's got this device, it's able to get my information, it's able to engage my shopping, my social, all this kind of nice things, and it's going to add new features all the time. But very soon they're going to realize that that centerpiece is just a centerpiece for that room. I want to know that information everywhere else. I want to know it when I'm driving. I want to know when I'm on the road. And people say, well, you can use Siri. Well, okay, if you've got that particular technology, you can use Siri. I think that in general, this idea that Alexa is bringing forth, it's not just going to be an Amazon thing, and it hasn't been. Like, voice is actually, it's been around in Roku for about 8 months. It's on Xfinity One for the cable systems. It's on the new products. Are all voices, kind of that natural piece, because there's so much information. There's no way you can do it from a navigation perspective. They recognize that. They just had to perfect voice and get it to a level that was acceptable for the mass market. I've been working on voice automation for about 15 years, so I'm familiar with the challenges that open air mics and that individuals and voice recognition versus speech recognition and all these things. It's great to see this stuff now finding its way into the mainstream with people that are passionate about it, like you are.
We have to wrap up in a couple minutes. So when you said the self-realization, the way the IoT is going to take, a group of IoT, or looking at data and coming up with some kind of predictive model to do more than what it is doing individually today, right?
Right.
I was just thinking, I know you didn't, when we started this whole IoT as people, you didn't want to go into the AI realm because that's a whole different discussion. But
I love to. I love this stuff.
But the need, the high level need of value add that the IoT group can offer is so tied to us. So I think it takes us into a whole new singularity realm, I think. So with that, I want to pass it back to you and tell me, any last couple things you want to say to wrap up?
Sure, you just drop singularity and say, with that, we're wrapping up. I'm like, wait a second. So there needs to be some sort of alcohol they serve so that we can really get into the meat and potatoes of singularity and 2045 and all this good stuff. In general, I think that the wrap is we're very, very early in this space. There are so many things we can mess up. There's so many things that we are messing up. But the bottom line is, if we expect people to even be involved in this trial, in this test that we're doing as we're taking mankind and taking the next logical cycle of technology melding to mankind, which is this, I'm expanding, my mobile device is no longer just mobile, it's also in more of my life. As we do this, security is paramount. Interoperability, it's got to play well with others, is paramount. And I gotta make sure it does what I want it to do. It's got to do its job, right? So those are, again, from the article, the 3 key things you would ask before you would hire somebody. Just think about you're hiring a device. When you take a device or when you're building a device, if you're a maker of IoT, think about what you would want if you were to hire somebody into your company, and make sure your device does the same thing.
It's fantastic. So that's our time today. I hope as more people come and watch our replays, that's when we get our viewership usually go up. We would have some questions, and people can tweet us both, and hope to continue this discussion soon. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.